Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the City Council workshop on November 5th, 2020. Would the clerk please take attendance? Roll call.
Or the ringing phone in the background. Second,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Leo,
Here.
Lewis,
Here.
Peterson. No Peterson.
Excuse me, Chris asked to be excused. She's in Chicago with her family.
Okay,
Go ahead.
and Verplank.
Yeah, Trester's here, Verplank.
She is in Grand Rapids celebrating her birthday with her daughter.
Okay. We need a motion to excuse the two absent members.
Mr. Mayor, this is Garn.
This one.
Move to excuse absences for both Chris Peterson and Jane Verplank.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is it Holly?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Second by Leo to excuse councilpersons Verplank and Peterson. This would be a roll call vote.
Lewis,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Becken,
Yes.
Trester.
Yes. Those members are excused. Are there any agenda changes to be proposed? All right, hearing none, we'll move to the public comment period. These are public comments on agenda items only at this time. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you wish to be recognized, please unmute yourself and ask to be so recognized. Anybody?
Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Would just like to extend my thanks to Aaron and the city staff and all the volunteers that made the election very successful from what I've heard in terms of being able to move folks through the polling place. I think it was very professionally handled, and frankly, being a poll worker and running an election was probably the toughest job in America this week. So I think the city and all of us residents owe our gratitude to Aaron and the team that put on the election. So just a big thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Is that Mr. Medler?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
With regard to the mayor selection process, I would hope that in considering who would be nominated for mayor, that we would consider someone closer to the personality of my former neighbor and mayor, Tony Vitari, who's long gone, as opposed to somebody who's going to act like Trump, who with the slightest slight will use the benefits of her office to go after other council members. I think in the last couple months, Chris Peterson has demonstrated that she would not be a good mayoral choice because of not only her editorial comment in the Commercial Record this past last week, and her attempts to use our outside legal counsel at our cost as taxpayers to find out how she can remove other members. I don't find that she demonstrates the necessary skills and personality to represent the city and the mayor, and would bring further embarrassment to herself and the city if she was a mayoral candidate.
Anyone else wishing to comment on the agenda items? Yeah. Mr. Medler, you had your comments. Do you have more?
I do. You have several.
Well, we're having difficulty hearing you.
Well, I'm up as high as I can. I'm right in front of the computer. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Very faint.
Maybe lean in.
Yeah, I didn't really hear much what he said at all.
Oh, you didn't hear anything about the mayoral election?
It's very difficult to hear you.
Later, I'll watch it later. We got to keep moving.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else wish to make a comment on agenda items? All right, hearing none, we'll move to the discussion items. The first discussion item is the mayor and mayor pro tem selection process. I asked just to review this so that we'd be prepared for doing our duty on Monday, which will be to elect a mayor and a mayor pro tem. Karen, you want to just walk over this a little bit? Walk through it, I should say. Or I
Sure.
can.
As we discussed earlier, the current council at its first meeting in November will select the mayor and the mayor pro tem for the next year. The first step is the mayor will open nominations for the office of mayor. Any member may make a nomination, no need for a second. The mayor then asks for another nomination, and the process is continued until no further nominations are offered. A vote is then held for the first person nominated until a majority of the council have voted in favor of a particular nominee, at which point that person takes over as mayor and conducts the rest of the meeting. The next step is the same process over for the mayor pro tem, that opens nominations for mayor pro tem until no further nominations are given, and then vote until a majority choose the mayor pro tem.
Okay,
And
thanks.
that's how it's going to go.
Okay, any questions? All right, then we'll move on to the next item, which is ordinance amendment review of the front yard setback. Cindy, you're going to take the lead on these? You're muted yet, kiddo. There you go.
Okay, the front yard setback issue is just housekeeping. There was an error in the description of what is a front yard, and we have tried to fix that. And you will see that proposal just takes Campbell Street. It takes Campbell Street and Park Street are not in the Manchester plat. So it just removes the Manchester plat from that front yard description. That was purely housekeeping. Is there any questions about that?
Cindy,
Holly?
I guess I'm wondering why we're calling out certain streets in certain areas.
It's for the different zone districts or different areas, and they have different setbacks. So each zone district has a dimensional section that talks about what does apply to front yard, the rear yard, the side yard, lot coverage. And the description, can you go to the next screen, Aaron, the one that shows the red line? That one right there. Park Street and Perryman and Campbell Streets in the Manchester plat. None of those streets are in the Manchester plat. So what it's saying is, if you're on Park Street or Perryman or Campbell, that should be crossing out in the Manchester plat, not that way. Sometimes the attorney's office sends them back to me different than I sent them in. But Perryman, Campbell, and Park Street are not in the Manchester plat.
Okay.
And they want to have a 25 feet back from the major streets and 15 back from the other streets, 15 front yard setback. So this just clarifies and cleans up that this zone district is not in the Manchester plat.
So, Mr. Mayor, I got a question for Cindy. So Cindy, okay, help me because it's been a busy couple days.
Mhm.
Did we discussed this last time we met, right? And so is this just, help me understand why we're back at this again?
This was actually scheduled to have action taken on March 23. And March 23, the meeting was canceled because of COVID. And it never got picked up to the next April meeting. So it never got acted on. We did talk about it before. I do see I have to make a correction there.
Mhm.
to remove the words in the Manchester plat, not,
Got it. Okay.
so
but
it's showing it underlined, but it should be struck.
yeah, I hear you. So I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, is this something that we then will basically approve officially on Monday? Then
Yeah,
is that correct? Okay. Okay.
All these ordinances we're talking about right now are on the agenda for approval on Monday.
Got it. Okay.
All right, no other questions on that one. Should we move to the fence height for corner lots amendment?
This we talked about at the introduction, and this just really allows for a property owner on a corner lot to fence in with a privacy fence just as much as a person on an interior lot could fence in. This does not change the front yard fencing requirements. The fence requirements in the front yard will still be 3 feet high. Are there any questions about this one? I felt last time like maybe I couldn't explain it good enough because of Zoom meetings, but I talked about it with Mark a bit. I think he's happy with the explanation.
Mhm.
So, Cindy, in the second picture there, does that mean that the red line is where you can put a 6-foot fence and the
That
black,
would be correct. Yep,
and the
that's
black line is
correct.
where you can put a 3-foot fence?
Yep, exactly.
Any questions?
Mm-mm.
All right, next one is ordinance or amendment on the non-conforming structure in the floodplain amendment.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting one. If your home or your business is burned by fire, burned to the ground, and you want to rebuild, you're allowed to rebuild in the same footprint. But we don't extend that same privilege to floodplain issues. And if your house is threatened by flood, it's my opinion and the Planning Commission's opinion that you should be able to elevate it in the same footprint that it's located. And that's exactly what is allowed for a house that's destroyed by fire, wind, or other calamity. And to be threatened by flood, you have to be in the floodplain area. It's not covering the whole city. And to be threatened by flood, you have to be 1 foot or less above the BFE, and the BFE is the base flood elevation. So if you're below the base flood elevation, you are considered to be threatened by flood, and it's limited to raising the home or the business to 3 feet above BFE or the base flood elevation. It's not the intent is not to allow you to add a whole basement or add a 2nd story onto your house or a 3rd story. Just intended to, if you're threatened by flood, lift it up. And we also get points with our community safety rating for allowing that. So is there any questions about that section?
I had a question.
Holly, and then go ahead.
So can someone raise their house right now without this ordinance?
Not if they're non-conforming to setbacks.
Okay.
But if somebody was non-conforming to setbacks and their house burned to the ground, they could build it back in the exact same footprint. And this is just analogous to that, just to extend the same privilege. If your house is destroyed by flood, it's not your fault. And it costs a lot to repair the flood. And if you do spend more than 50% of the value of the structure, not the value of the land and the structure, but just the structure, the building code will require you to elevate it above the floodplain. So it's just a little parity with giving them the same privilege that everybody else has.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cindy, I believe that it could be remedied if, I really agree with what you're doing, what we're going to do, but if the person has more that they want to do, they can go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, right?
Correct.
But there's always an alternative for people that say, well, okay, I got to lift my house up. I got to put a new foundation underneath it. I got this relief, but it's going to be 2 feet higher. And you always go to the zoning board of appeals, and that's how the system works.
Right now, that's how it works. And if you can't comply with the setbacks, then it's an issue. However, if your house burned all the way to the ground and you wanted to put a new foundation in, you could do that by right without a variance.
Right. Good. Thank you, Cindy.
Yep.
I apologize if you heard that hum. I've got some technical issue going on here. Anyone else have any questions on this one? All right, then we're going to move to the update uses in commercial zone districts amendment.
That was kind of challenging. It was also very interesting because the Planning Commission went through every single zone district, read the intent section, and then applied that to each of the permitted uses and uses that are not permitted, and tried to understand that each zone district had a little bit different focus. More intense uses are allowed in some zone districts than others. And they spent quite a bit of time looking at that. It was basically to treat restaurants equally in all zone districts. Live performances were not permitted. So we changed the definition of motion picture facility to theater, and which would allow for live performances. And some other minor changes. There's a chart in your packet that shows the different uses. There's one error in the chart, which was what made this confusing to me, because it was so full of little details. You had to fix stuff in many different places. But the bed and breakfast item, if you look at the chart for bed and breakfast, it shows the exact same as what the proposed is. The changes are, the mistake is that currently bed and breakfast is not permitted in C2 East Zone District, where we already have a bed and breakfast that's located there. So we changed that to a special land use instead of not permitted. But otherwise, if you have any questions, I mean, Planning Commission did spend time on it very thoughtfully.
Any questions here?
Mr. Mayor, this is Garnett, just a comment. Cindy, I know from my time on the Planning Commission, this was something that you wanted to get to, and it's nice to see that you're finally cleaning up all this stuff. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just again, a comment like Garnett's is that, you know, the Planning Commission does so much heavy lifting for the city. And they went zone by zone to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. And, you know, so much of the hard work is done by the Planning Commission, and I really appreciate and encourage people that want to be involved in the city. That's a great place to start.
Yep. Any other comments, questions? All right, Cindy, thank you. And we should be well prepared to vote on these on Monday. Thanks.
Perfect.
Yep. The next item is correction of a legal description of a property at 870 Park Street. Cindy, you're still on, I guess.
This is a very interesting situation. There are two parcels that are surrounded by city-owned property near Mount Baldhead Park, near the water tower, actually. And if you see on this drawing, the 1931 legal description is a piece of vacant property. The poor person who lives in the 870 Park Street, her house was on city property. So she owns the dirt in the yellow, and her house is on the property that's pink. And so what this is to correct the legal description, so she can have her existing house be on her own property, and the city would take ownership of the exact same size parcel that she never had her house on. So this was done in 1931, and the topography probably had a lot to do with why they got the wrong legal description. but it was never corrected until they wanted to put some water upgrades because they couldn't get well water. They couldn't get a well drilling rig up to that property. So they wanted to connect to city water, and that's when we found the error. And so she can get clear title to her house that she's not proposing to change. No use changes, no other changes, just the legal descriptions will change. Do you have any questions about that?
Any questions?
It's good stuff.
Mark?
Yeah, I had a chance to talk with Cindy on this. I think it's important for the council to also know that the property that says 1931 description in the adjoining lot to it is currently owned by the city and the all surrounding property. Those
They're
two
all
parcels up there are kind of like islands surrounded by city property. And it's, yeah, so they're kind of unique. I don't know if everybody walked up through there, but part of the Fishtown Trail walk around general area, if that helps you. But
There's a second little part to this that would, if you see the house in the middle, that's just existing, that has the correct legal description, but it also has an easement to cross city property to get to the street, because otherwise you'd just be standing there, and perfect for COVID, but nothing else. To extend the same easement to the pink property. It's already existing easement. One more person will be authorized to use it, even though they've been using it since 1931.
So, Mr. Mayor, question. So I've been hiking up in those trails. So help me out, Cindy. There's an overlook deck up there somewhere. Have you been up there? Do you know where it's at? It's an overlook deck.
I do not.
I'm trying to get my bearings straight. There's also really no kind of a paved road, right? It's really just a dirt road. Yeah, it's just a dirt road. I've always been curious how in the heck they get up in there. I know I've seen the gate.
Well beyond the gate.
Oh yeah, it's like a quarter of a mile up there. Yeah.
When you get to the gate, you kind of turn right and then it goes up there. It's almost impossible for them to drive up there. So the easement is for vehicular and pedestrian traffic. And it's still the city-owned property, but it will just allow them to cross the city property as they always have been able to do.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? Cindy, are you planning on having this on our agenda Monday for approval?
Monday, correct.
Thank you. Next item is the catch up here. The Selman meeting regarding band shell location and design. Karen, you want to speak to this? Karen, you're muted, yeah.
Last week, the mayor, myself, John Moxley, and Rick Stout had a Zoom meeting with Jim Selman. And the purpose of the meeting was to hear firsthand his preferences before any design options were refined. And he confirmed that he liked the big pavilion, and he also liked the design that had the wavy gate on the front. And those are two that John will be putting some cost to. I think another one he's also going to put a cost to, but I'm not sure which one. Jim was open to extending the date. He pointed out that the agreement allowed for that. And like us, he wanted it to be done right and was willing to extend the time frame. He did feel it was important to have it up and running if we can have performances next summer. He did not want to move the band shell to Coughlin Park, and he had some really good reasons. The park is between two residential units, and it's also kitty corner across the street from the Arts Center, the Saugatuck Center for the Arts. He pointed out that performances in that park would disturb the residential, and it would also have the potential to bleed over into any performances that the Art Center was doing, as their performances would bleed over into ours, into the city performances. And because of that, it would ruin it for everyone. So I thought those were some really good reasons to keep it in Wicks Park. On the diagram, we were discussing putting it in location C, and he also liked that location. He said that there's some trees that appear to be dead there, and he wouldn't want any live trees to be cut down. And so he liked that place, and he also liked the bathrooms being moved over to A when and if the city was able to do that. I think that was it, but it was a very good meeting, very personable man. And so that's your update.
Thanks, and that's a good report, Glenn. Any questions or comments on that one? Mark?
Thanks for Karen for putting that meeting together. I appreciate it. Is Police and Vandenbrink also coming with estimates on the restroom at the same time?
We have not asked them to do that at this point.
Okay.
I think the point Mark is about to make is that we need to do that. If part of the project is to move bathrooms, I think we want to know the whole scope of the cost of that. Is that where you're going, Mark?
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Yep.
There's also
Okay.
quite a bit, there's also some additional room up in that area if we don't, we can extend into a couple of those parking spaces there that are adjacent to the sidewalk and maybe have an entrance off the side. If we get pushed for size and, too much space being gobbled up by these structures in that park, but that's what you pay those designers for. So
Could I clarify? Do you want a price to just remove the bathroom or to remove it and rebuild it?
Personally, I feel we need to replace it, have a bathroom in that area. Well,
it's not going to take much to remove that one.
Okay.
But I think a replacement of something comparable.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm on it.
Mr. Mayor, just related to that, I would assume that we're asking John and Fleiss and Vandenbrink to really kind of look at this in stages, so to speak. We have Jim's gift of the band shell being one, and a price or prices associated with the two different versions. That's one stage. Then the second being the deconstruction and reconstruction of a restroom to location A, right? Not one lump project cost.
that would be, yeah.
Okay.
Karen, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to agree with that. I think it need to be kept separate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll move to the election day process. I asked Karen and Aaron to brief us on how the election went, given the difficulties of this election period throughout the nation. Who's going to start off here? Karen, Aaron?
Well, I've
I'm going to
prepared.
refer to Aaron.
Okay.
I've prepared a little summary for you. It was definitely an incredible experience, and I'm very proud of the way everybody handled it. So just some quick numbers. We had 550 absentee voter ballots requested total. 520 of them were to me by 4 p.m. on Monday, November 2nd, which is the deadline to process them through the qualified voter file, which is the database that you use to manage elections. 194 of them, or we had 194 ballots cast at the election at the Women's Club. 21 of those were AV ballots that had been returned. We had, oh, sorry, that's duplicated. I'm still trying to wake up from a very long night. So we ended up having a total of 714 ballots cast, and only 9 of the AV ballots were not returned. So then I thought I'd just run you through kind of a TikTok because it was a very long day.
Aaron, could you just remind us how many registered voters we had?
Yes, 892, correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy. I think it's 892 right now. It might be 893. We had a couple that were sort of last minute.
I think it was 893,
That's
Yeah.
got to be the best participation rate we've ever had.
80%.
Yep. Yeah, it was much busier at the polling location than I expected it would be based on how many ballots we had received ahead of time. But people were very, it didn't matter what side you were on, whether it was local or national, people were very, very, felt a very urgent need to get their ballot in and voted and counted.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I started at 6 o'clock in the morning at the Women's Club with my pearls as a nod for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and many of the elections inspectors also wore pearls as a nod to RBG.
Nice.
At 6:30 in the morning, they were sworn in. Probably my biggest regret from the election is that I did not ask my afternoon people to step outside of the polling location to take a picture of them. So this is only my morning workers. But they all deserve a great big thank you because they worked extremely hard and they did an exceptional job. And I never, ever, ever could have pulled it off without their experience and knowledge and expertise. So by 7 a.m. we were open and having computer problems with the electronic poll book, which is called an EPB. That is the day of database that's not online. That computer is disconnected from the internet. Just added a little detail there for you. We were able to restart the database in the computer and resolve that problem pretty quickly. By 9:30 a.m., we had a poll watcher arrive. She was very nice. She stayed until the very, very, very wee hours of the morning with just a few breaks. She said she went to the beach and it was very nice. At 11:45, we started having problems with the ballots getting jammed, which is pretty common when you have write-ins. They go into a write-in bin. When the write-in bin gets full, the ballots start to get jammed up. So when I was unjamming one of the ballots, I just happened by chance of luck to be standing over the little reader screen and was able to very quickly see it flash up that the ballot had been cast successfully. So we put a little tiny pink dot on it so we would be able to identify it very easily and put it in the auxiliary bin so we wouldn't double count it. Then as the day went on, we had our afternoon poll workers show up at 1 p.m. and they did the changing of the guard and everyone was sworn in. At 8 p.m. we closed the polls and we thought we were perfectly balanced at 713. So we ran the closing procedures and printed the tapes and did all of that. But the thing I've learned with elections is there are a lot of checks and balances. And one of those checks and balances turned up that we should have actually had 714. So we ended up having to physically recount by hand every single ballot twice in groups of 2, 3, or 4 people. We double checked the count. We physically ran them all through the tabulator a second time. And the number came out perfectly balanced at 714, which is, once we had looked at the different details, what we did expect. So yay, we were done until we got to another system of checks and balances. The electronic poll book asks you to enter a whole series of numbers. The first one is, what was the blank stack of ballots that showed up? And then it goes through and asks you, how many had to be duplicated because they weren't readable, how many this, how many that. We entered all those numbers in and it told us we were off by 25. So having worked with databases, I figured it was just an input somewhere. The database knows what it's doing, just I did not. So we went through and we double checked and we triple checked and we quadruple checked and we called every person known to mankind. We called Abby and Lori out in the township who had their own very, very, very busy day with very long lines, and they were very gracious to take time to help us and try and help us troubleshoot it. We called Bob Janetsky's office. We spoke to a number of people in that office. We spoke to clerks that were turning in their results. We went through everything we could think of and were unable to figure out where in that report we didn't have the numbers right. So finally, about 4 or 5 a.m., I called Bob Janetsky's office again and said, what do I do? I'm still 25 ballots off. Brian Kelly, who will forever be my hero, the clerk from Plainwell, happened to be there and walked through with me every single number that was put in there and explained to me that when the electronic poll book was asking for new unused ballots delivered to the poll to start the evening, each of the absentee voter ballots that were delivered, even though they'd already been voted in an envelope, were considered blank, unvoted, and needed to be recorded in there. Once I went in and added those 21, we were within 3. And I want to say, and Cindy can tell me exactly what time it was, maybe around 5:15 or so. Finally, we cut the elections inspectors loose, and I went to Allegan with the results. Then Wednesday morning, I had to get up and go back to the women's club and crawl through every last piece of paper and envelope and ballot stub and everything I could find to figure out and account for those 3 votes so that we would be certified by the canvassers and recountable. And I was able to find that we had 3 AV ballots that had to be duplicated. So there are only 2 ways a ballot would have to be duplicated. All move ballots, military and overseas ballots, come in such that they have to be transferred from a regular piece of paper to a ballot. 2 elections inspectors at a minimum from 2 different parties, the 2 major parties, have to go through that process of duplicating ballots so that we can feed them through and get them tabulated. When we were processing our AV ballots that had been delivered to me, and we had some that would not go through, they had been put in that envelope to be duplicated, but that did not get recorded in a separate way in the EPB, other than we have some that we couldn't read. So I was able to backtrack and, after a lot of work, figure out that we had 7 move ballots. We duplicated a total of 12, and that's where my 3 were. So then I had to create a report for Bob Janetsky and send that on. Pardon me. And I got a message from him this morning that we passed and we're canvassable. The canvasser signed off on us, rather, and I believe that means we should be recountable. So everything, despite it being a very, very, very long night, worked out just fine. So just a couple quick thank yous. Cindy Osman, as I'm sure all of you know, did an exceptional job bridging the gap after Monica left and before I got here, and continues to do an exceptional job bridging that gap as I get up to speed, and has been so completely invaluable and helpful to me in learning everything I had to learn and getting through and holding my hand through every single step of the process. And she also called her Uber driver husband, Craig, to come and help us process AV ballots in the afternoon. And he stayed for quite a while until we got all of those processed. And that was really nice of him to do that. Also, all of the elections inspectors did an exceptional job. They were very, very, very patient, very supportive, very encouraging. And just overall, they did a really, really superb job. The DPW helped me move everything down there, and they're always a great help with everything. And then Jane Verplank insisted on riding with me at 5:30 in the morning to Allegan after I'd worked almost 24 hours because she was worried about me hitting a deer in the Allegan woods. And then today on her birthday came down and helped me clean up the women's club, which I really appreciate. Not sure what that says about me as a friend, but it was very nice. And thank you to the women's club for allowing us to have it there. And Bob Janetsky and all of his staff for the 75,000 calls I made to their office and all of their support. And not most importantly, but very importantly, Brian Kelly for helping me understand how those AV ballots had to be entered into the database to get our numbers to reconcile. And finally, thanks to all the voters for their patience, because those results didn't get uploaded to Alton County until 5:30, and they didn't get the stuff until shortly thereafter. So all in all, it was a really exceptional election. It's not uncommon to have ballots jam. There were about 7 to 9 other precincts that had to retabulate everything because they had a ballot jam. And I think the last clerk to turn in their stuff was around 9:30 in the morning. So we weren't that late. It was real late, not that late. And then finally, I just wanted to address the issue of election results and being able to give those out. Bob Janetsky told us very specifically we should not, could not, and may not send out messages to the existing city council members or anyone else with the results. However, anyone is welcome to come to the polls as a watcher, and anyone is allowed to request a copy of the tape. Jane Verplank did come down. She did request a copy of the tape, and I did walk outside of the Women's Club and hand that to her, rather than asking her to come in to the polling location and receive that tape in front of all of the elections inspectors. That was a judgment call, and I understand that there may be some question as to whether or not I should have done that, but as someone who's been a city council member for a number of years and I thought deserved the respect of, or just the courtesy, I didn't really know what the difference would be, her walking in the building or me walking out of the building with the tape. She'd have the tape regardless. And once someone is given the tape, I don't have any control over what they do with it. After she was given the tape, we realized we had the issue between the 713 and 714, and had to go through, and then we were pretty busy trying to figure that out.
Aaron, what an epic story.
Something.
You and your crew clearly went above and beyond. So congratulations on getting through that, and our thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was an incredible learning experience, and I'm grateful for everybody that helped with it.
And I can attest that that is true. And thank you, Aaron. You did an awesome job, because I didn't get home myself until 4:30 in the morning. So
yeah, it was late. It was, I was at City Hall by 6 a.m. and I put my head on my pillow finally at 6 a.m. Then about 2 or 3 hours later, I was at the Women's Club. And I have learned that I am not 21 anymore. And an all-nighter, I require more than that many hours of sleep. But I was pretty grateful I could get enough brain cells bumping together to figure out the reporting issue that we had.
Well, thanks again. Any other comments or questions for Aaron?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Garn. So Holly and I had the pleasure of being over in the township. And if you happen to drive by at all at any time during the day in the township, you saw the long line. The township experienced similar issues with the paper jamming in the machine right away in the morning. And at the end of the night, when we were rectifying the books, so to speak, there were 13 ballots that were in that auxiliary bin that had to be basically tabulated. So it seemed to be a problem across the board, as Aaron mentioned. And you know, I've worked elections for many, many years now, and it seems invariably that these things happen in probably the most stressful of times, which is just so I can't imagine the stress y'all were under. So God bless you for being there, and thank you. I think the city was very fortunate, and so many people voted in advance, which is really, really nice. I do want to say, and this is, please don't take this as a criticism, but more having been a precinct captain and having folks wanting to know the results, and having to adhere to the rules, and basically putting the tape on the wall, you know, that's, and yeah, it's very difficult. You have people demanding to know the answers. And unfortunately, because of the very issues you mentioned, we can't do that until the results are valid and every ballot's accounted for. So that's really hard. And I understand probably the situation you were in. But I imagine you probably learned something from it. So
well, I
with
asked
that,
Bob, and he said if someone asks for it, I can't say no.
Yeah,
regardless
yeah,
of where we are in the process. So
that's fine. And I'm not being critical. It's just, it's very difficult. So it's, yeah. So
yeah,
thank
there were
you.
a lot of phone calls and emails and text messages wanting the information, and Bob had told us specifically not to do that. But
Yeah, understood. Understood.
You know, Aaron, perhaps lesson learned. Next time around, we should get that information out in advance so we set people's expectations. I know in the past we've been pretty casual about that type of thing, but now we know. Okay, any other questions, comments? Holly?
I just want to thank you, Aaron, I'm sure that was very stressful, and I just want to, I'm thankful for your candor and your honesty and how you walked us through everything. And it just sounds like it was incredibly stressful. And I am glad that you shared everything with us and that we made it through, and it was a good team. So
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, then let's move on to public comment on any topic. If anyone in the audience wishes to make a comment, please get my attention and identify yourself.
Mayor?
Barry?
Oh, no, I'm not public yet. I wait for council comments, right? Wait.
Okay. Anyone wish to make a comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move to council comments. And Barry, since you're primed up, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to congratulate all the elected officials in Saugatuck. I've reached out to the new council members and given them my congratulations, and that I can help. If there's any way I can help them, I will. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. And one person stopped me and they said, "Well, who won the election?" And I said, "We all did. We all won. We had 4 new people that stepped up. They're going to be involved in our community, even though them that weren't elected. So it's a win for Saugatuck. Congratulations to everybody elected, and I'll see you around."
Thanks, Barry. And we don't get a chance to say it on Monday. We sure appreciate your service in Saugatuck. I know you've been doing that a long time. You've been mayor pro tem, and you've contributed a whole lot to not only moving Saugatuck forward, but keeping us on process, doing it in the right way. So my thanks to you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now, Holly, you want to go next? You're muted in.
I had to unmute myself, sorry. I just want to commend both Jane and Barry for their service. Barry's my neighbor, and I look forward to working with both of you and seeing you in the future. And having done this job, it takes a tremendous amount of time, and I can only imagine the thousands of hours both Jane and Barry put in. So I just really want to acknowledge the time that they have put into the city that we all love.
Okay, thanks. Mark, you want to go next?
I just want to echo congratulations and thanks to Aaron and Cindy and the entire city staff for pulling off this election. As we can see what's happening nationwide, it's probably not going as smooth as it went here in Saugatuck. So they jumped the hurdles and got it done. So their efforts are appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Garn?
Yeah, I'll share this again on Monday, but I echo Holly's thanks. Barry, you're on the call today, so certainly for you, thanking you for all your time and effort. I tell this to everybody, it takes a great courage and time to both run and serve in city politics, if you will. And so your efforts are appreciated. And I hope that we can convince you to stay involved with the recycling committee. So, because I really like having you on that committee. So since we're almost done, I would love to have you finish that, wrap that up with us, please, sir. Thank you.
Well, knowing Barry, he's not done with public service. So I think I'm sure he'll continue on that committee and others in the future, right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much for a good meeting tonight. I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, this is Garn.
Oh,
Move to adjourn the meeting.
a second.
I guess I'll second it. I don't have much time left to do that.
Yeah, okay. Moved by Lewis, seconded by Johnson to adjourn the meeting. We'll have to take a roll call. Aaron?
Lewis,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Becken,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
and Trester.
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for joining us.